Just a few weeks ago, Arizona Senator Jeff Flake, perhaps the most outspoken, high-ranking GOP critic of President Donald Trump, was here in New Hampshire. On this program, he said a Republican should challenge the president in the 2020 primary. When we asked him who exactly might be the right Republican to undertake such a challenge, the first name he mentioned was John Kasich, governor of Ohio. And Governor Kasich just so happens to be my guest this morning. Governor, thanks for being here. We appreciate your time.
Wonder what he wanted for that.
Yeah, geez, I know. You got you in a little trouble here. And, you know, before we get to that fun, speculated kind of stuff, let's jump into something that Senator Flake, which was talking about, was the idea of you know, speaking out against a Republican president. Does it bother you in any way that more Republicans don't have your back when you are arguing Republican positions, traditionally Republican positions, against the White House?
No, no. Look, for all of my career, you know, the Republican Party has been my vehicle, never my master. I think back even to the early days when I was just a very young guy in the Ohio Senate. I was writing my own budgets. There was disruptions that I caused there because of things I believed in. When I went to Congress, I became a Pentagon reformer. That was never set well. I wrote my own budget to try to get us a balanced budget, which we ultimately got against President Bush. It's nothing personal. It's just, you know, and as governor of the state, I expanded Medicaid because I think people need help who are addicted or mentally ill. And so, you know, I do my thing. And do I wish we had a little bigger crowd for some of those things? Of course I do. But it doesn't bother me. I would say that the Republican Party now that I hear is not the Republican Party that I recognize, because we are always been for free and fair trade, but free trade, open trade. We welcome immigrants. Now we don't seem to do that. We're always worried about debt. And, you know, I don't know if you know this, people don't focus on it, but this new budget that they just passed is going to increase the debt by another $1 trillion. Here's interesting. From the beginning of our country, it wasn't until 1982 that we accumulated debt of $1 trillion. Now we're at $21 trillion, with it going up $1 trillion for the next 10 years. And this is troubling. It's not my party that does things like that, one I recognize. So, look, you know, I got to speak out, but I'm not here to be a critic. If Donald Trump does something that's good, I want to praise him. If he does something that I think is dead wrong, like he did on Easter, saying we're going to kick all the DACA people out on an Easter, which is a day of hope, I don't like that. So I'm going to have something to say about it as long as I have a voice.
Yeah, you delivered a bit of a rebuke to the president there. What made you so upset about that message? I mean, most Republicans agree with the president that the DACA recipients should have to either get in line or face deportation of some kind.
Well, the fact is they came here, and they have no will of their own. They were just children when they got here. They've played by the rules. I mean, if they violate the rules, fine. We got to get them out if they commit crimes. But that's not the case here. And they've built families. And to me, they ought to be given an opportunity to stay here. And to say on Easter Sunday, the greatest day of hope, at least in the Christian world, and even in the Jewish world of Passover, hope, you take hope away from a group of people, I don't think it's right.
Do you think the president believes in that kind of hope at all?
I can't tell you what he believes or doesn't believe. I'm just saying that those actions were, in my opinion, they were inappropriate.
Let's talk about another issue in which you're kind of at odds with your party. You're one of a small number of Republican governors who, in the wake of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas shooting, have come out in favor of a package of gun policy reforms. One of those would be so-called red flag legislation that would make it easier to disarm people who seem to be spiraling toward increased violence. Before that, as governor, you identified as a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. When you were in Congress, you did vote in favor of the assault weapons ban.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to pin me down,
Yeah,
right?
so what are your true beliefs in regards to firearms?
Well, I believe we ought to protect the Second Amendment. I think it's really important. But I also think there's limits on what the Second Amendment is all about. So, for example, if you know somebody, if you see somebody who's either going to pose harm to themselves or to other people, why wouldn't we take their guns? We got to go through a court and have the court look at it. But should they be able to keep their gun? I mean, that doesn't. Who would be for that? You know. Bump stocks, those type of things, turning a semi-automatic into a fully automatic. Why do we need to do that? So we can still protect the Second Amendment, but there's reasonable limits to it. And I got a group of people together. I do this a lot. Get a group of good-hearted people, well-motivated, some who didn't see any reason to change anything in the Second Amendment, others who were for the Second Amendment but we needed changes. They came together and came up with a package, a consensus package that I hope we can pass through my legislature. So it will impose some reasonable limits, but it's not going to erode the Second Amendment, because the Second Amendment is a part of our country, our Constitution, and in many respects our culture.
Are you going to ban bump stocks, though?
We hope to, yes. If the federal government now is moving, and according to our package, we would go and comply and do that.
You've written extensively about sort of the coarsening of our politics and this erosion of the national character. When, we rely on the Second Amendment to protect our rights, and obviously the gun is only as dangerous as the person wielding it. If we are seeing this sort of diminishing of citizenship, this diminishing of character, does not the Second Amendment become somewhat dangerous in the hands of a people who are losing their values?
No, I don't see it that way. Here's what I'm saying, that our lives are so fast now that I believe the things that are written on our heart, which reflect the character of our Creator. Now, if you happen to be a humanist, and that's okay. You get up every day, you try to fix things, okay, and I'm with you. But for me, I need something deeper, and I do have a faith. And I believe that our purpose, and this is not just what I think, but what Christians, Jews, and Muslims say, that our lives are unique, and they are a reflection of the Creator and his character. And I believe his character is justice, and it is compassion, and it is mercy, and it is forgiveness. Not that I do all those things, Adam, by any stretch. I try, okay? But when we forget that, or if our lives move so fast and we forget those values, we polarize from each other. And there's a lot of anger. Anger doesn't ever bring us anywhere good. I mean, I guess righteous anger can, but just anger can take us to a point where people want some sort of revenge. I don't like this. The other thing I'm concerned about in our country, for all of our listeners, and don't be just thinking about me when as a politician when I'm saying this. This is my concern as a father. This is my concern as a citizen. If we enter a post-truth environment where we cannot determine the truth, if the truth becomes a matter of opinion, then I think we live in a chaotic time. And it's up to all of us to say, no, there is truth. And we got to be careful that we don't let our own biases get in the way of determining the truth. Now, this is a weird conversation for somebody who's in politics to have. But I think it's really critical. And these kind of philosophical discussions matter. And it's because it's up to all of us to figure out, what do we want this culture and this country to look at? My hope is in the people that come together to raise us up, to bring us together with a handful of leaders who say we get it and will take action to make us healthier, more unified.
If there truly is sort of a battle for the soul of America right now, why not run for president and try to continue that fight?
Well, first of all, this is just like typical of a politician. Well, he won't answer the question. I don't really know what I'm going to do. I know that for the next 9 months, I want to be the best governor I can possibly be. And we have many things that we are doing there that I think make a big difference for the citizens. Longer term, I don't know what I'm going to do. And it isn't wise to get in a frenzy or a fury to decide what you're going to think about things. And I really don't know. We'll see. And the other thing in our country today is we have no clue who's going to win. I mean, did anybody ever think that Loyola of Chicago would go to the Final Four? I mean, there's so many things that are happening in our society today that just seem to just change so dramatically. So I want to see what my responsibility is as a person.
Is there a prompt? Are you looking for something? Does the president have to cross some kind of line? Because a primary against a sitting president within that party, I think one publication referred to it as kind of a quote kamikaze mission. It's never succeeded for the candidate who's attempted it, although it has worked in unseating that incumbent president.
I don't like the notion of being in something you can't win. I would tell you that. It doesn't make any sense to me. But, I just don't know. All of my options are on the table. There's one thing that I want to continue to have, and that's a voice. A voice that is in, when I say the middle, I don't mean the squishy middle, but forget the extremes on the right and the left. Think about those soft people on the right, the soft people on the left, and the rest of us that kind of hang out in here. I want to be able to have a voice that speaks to them. I don't know what that's going to mean.
Well, certainly you are the defending champ in Dixville Notch, and who knows?
I am. That was a great victory up there.
All right, who knows? Maybe in 2020 you'll be back to defend it. We'll see. Governor Kasich, we thank you for your time.
Thank you
appreciate you being
very
here.
much.